This video is for you if you are learning Danish, considering learning Danish, or just have a general interest in languages. The question is Danish easy or difficult to learn for speakers of the English language, either who have English as a native language or as a second language? What are some of the big things that set Danish apart from English and other languages? Hello and welcome to Mix Languages. My name is Michael. You can call me Mick. I have been teaching Danish as a professional teacher for more than 10 years now, and I have come across a lot of different people from different countries. Most of them already spoke English, but not all of them. But since you're watching this video, you definitely speak English to a certain degree. So this video is going from English to Danish. What are the differences? I've broken it down into three aspects: the grammatical aspect, then pronunciation, and cultural things. Let's dive right into it. So let's see here. Grammar. First of all, I would like to say that grammar in Danish is fairly easy. It is very similar to English. If you speak, for example, a Romance language or a Germanic language or a Slavic language, then you have a lot of grammar that English does not have, and Danish also does not have it. For example, conjugation. Conjugation is not present in Danish. We have the same verb ending for all people, for all pronouns. I, you, he, right? It's always the same ending. And also the different verb forms that we have to learn, the different verb tenses. In English you have three forms. You have the present, I do. You have the past tense, I did. And you have the present perfect, I have done, right? So you have to learn do, did, done. Danish is exactly the same. You have these three forms to learn, nothing else. Well, you also have the imperative, please do it, which is a different form, but that's easy. That's always regular. You don't have irregularities there. So for regular verbs, it's easy to learn these three forms. And then for some irregular verbs, you will have to just memorize them. And I always recommend people to learn to memorize these things by using the words in context, by making sentences, not just memorizing them like the old school way of learning. Then syntax, the word order in sentences in Danish is very similar to English, but not exactly similar. And what is important to note is that the word order, the sentence order in Danish is very simple. It's very regular. It's very easy. There are strict rules, and normally the sentences follow these rules. Of course, there are always minor things you can kind of switch around, put in different places. For example, adverbs, often you can switch them around. But generally, we have a strict syntax, and we have three different types of syntax forms in Danish. I have a video about that, so if you are learning Danish, check that video out. The link to the video is in the description of this video, as are the links to the other videos of mine that I'm going to mention in this video. Okay, so it's always going to be down below the video in the description. One of these other videos that I've made is on a thing called inversion, which is kind of part of the syntax idea of the sentence order. Inversion is an important feature of Danish where you have to invert the subject and the verb in certain cases, right? I do becomes do I. For example, in questions you do that, but also in other cases. I have a video on that about inversion, very important, very crucial part of Germanic languages, it seems. German has it as well, Swedish, Norwegian, probably also Dutch, I'm not sure. Right, inversion, important. So video in the description below. And then there are cases where you might only have one word in English, for example, and several words in Danish, for example. This is the case for the word to know, where you have two words in Danish. I have a video on that. These words are kende or vide. And I have recently made a video on the word even in English, where I came to the conclusion that we have to learn a lot of words in Danish to be able to use the word even in Danish. I think I had 7 different words that you have to know about, that you have to know how to use. Again, the link to that video is in the description of the video. Then one thing that can be difficult for strict speakers of English who have not learned another language, for example German or a Romance language, is the fact that in English there's only one gender to nouns: the cat, the woman, the man, and so on. In Danish there are 2. It's even worse for German, where you have 3 and you have to memorize right? In Danish also, you have often to memorize, is it one or the other gender? The two genders are en and it. Fælleskøn is en, the article is en. Fælleskøn means common gender. That's kind of a contraction of, Danish had also, like German, 3 forms in the old days. A masculine, a feminine, and a neutral form. And the masculine and feminine were put together into one form called fælleskøn, which means common gender. And these nouns, they have the article en. Then we have the neutral still, right? It. Let me just give an example. We have the word en fyr. En fyr means a guy. And only a male guy, not like in English where it can be, hey guys, can also be women, female people. And et fyr is kind of an oven. You have, for example, the word oliefyr, oil burner, I think you call that, right? To generate heat in your house, for example. Et fyr. And this takes me to the idea of adjectives. In Danish, adjectives have different forms. In English, they don't. You normally have just one form of the adjective. Of course, you also have the comparative form. Big, bigger, the biggest, right? Danish has that as well. But in the general form, in the form big, you would have 3 different forms in Danish. We would have the basic form, and then we would have the T form and the E form. For example, with the word cold, kold, koldt, kolde, or the third one can also be said kold, kolde, kold. And for example, in this case, we would say en kold fyr, et koldt fyr, right? En kold fyr could be a cold guy, like he shows no feelings, and et koldt fyr could be a cold of these oven things, right? And then the plural would have the E form, nogle kolde fyre, nogle kolde fyr. Right here, the plural form is different between these 2 words. The guy has an E, fyre, and the oil burner doesn't have an E. Right, so nogle kolde fyre, nogle kolde fyr. And then related to this is also the problem in Danish of using the definite article. The guy, for example, the oil burner, right? In Danish, that would be fyren for the guy, fyren, and fyret with et for the oil burner. And then if you combine that with adjectives, you suddenly don't have the article, which was in the end for these words I just mentioned. You have it suddenly in the beginning. So from fyren you go to den kolde fyr, the cold guy. From fyret you go to det kolde fyr. And from fyrene, the guys or the oil burners, you go to de kolde fyre or de kolde fyr. So that's often very confusing to people learning Danish. And again, the solution is a lot of contact with the language, and the best contact, in my humble opinion as a teacher, is active contact, where you actually create sentences. And that's the way I work in my lessons often, right? So let's move on here. Pronunciation. Pronunciation is, compared to English, not very different, kind of, in the idea that Danish is also a non-phonetic language. You don't say the things like you read them, right? If you learn Spanish, for example, you can see a new word that you have never seen before, but if you know the basic sounds in Spanish, you can read it correctly. In English, you can't, right? A good example in English to show how the English is not phonetic is the word no and the word now. Why do they have to be pronounced totally different, even though they have N-O-W in the end, right? No and now. So Danish is the same, but Danish, I would say, is a bit worse in its way of being non-phonetic. But of course, there are also a lot of rules for pronunciation in Danish. If you want to learn a bit more about these rules for pronunciation in Danish, going from the written to the spoken language, then you can also watch some of my videos. I have made a playlist on pronunciation things, and I would definitely recommend you to check that out, okay? One example of this non-phonetic thing is the word selvfølgelig, which we can pronounce in different ways. We can pronounce it the correct, slow way. Selvfølgelig. Selvfølgelig. We already here see a feature of Danish where the LV in the beginning turns into an L. So the LV, normally V is not pronounced in Danish. Then we have følge. The LG has this LJ, L, L, J, J. And then we have the li in the end. The G in the end of a word or of a syllable is often not pronounced, right? Selvfølgelig. But from there, we can also go and say it in a faster way. That's how people would often say it nowadays. Selvfølgelig, right? So the first L kind of disappears, se. The LG thing, følge, disappears as well, kind of. And the G in the end still disappears because it disappeared from the beginning, right? Selvfølgelig. Selvfølgelig. That's the minimal way of saying this word, and that's often going to happen when Danes speak. Because we want to save energy, right? We want to say things the fastest way possible. So we have a lot of words that that kind of lose some of their sounds, especially frequently used words. I probably should make a video about those frequently used words at some point. I haven't made it yet. And we also contract in the sentence. So if you have the word det er, right? D-E-T, it's pronounced det always. Det er, det er godt, det er godt, det er godt. The det and the are kind of going to be contracted often into one word. Det er godt, det er godt, det er godt, right? That's one thing that happens often in certain cases. Well, then a very important thing about Danish is the vowel sounds. Danish has a lot of different vowel sounds. A lot more than many other languages, most other languages actually. And that's what makes Danish, that's one of the things that makes Danish very difficult to learn. There are studies that show that Danish children learn their native language Danish later than children who have other languages as their native language, probably because of the vowels. Let me just give you an example. Now I'm going to say words here that are the same, but thus just the vowel sounds are different, right? So we're going to make words that start with the B, the consonant B, and then end in different vowel sounds. And they're all going to be different words. I'm going to say it fairly quickly. If you want to see the meaning of each word, you can turn down the velocity of the video, the speed of the video on YouTube. You can put it to, for example, 50%. Then you have more time to read the meaning and stuff. So let's start. Bi, by, by, be, bæ, bag, bar, bare, bø, bu, bue, bo, bog, borg, bord, bær, bære, bage, bajer, biver, bio, bæver, borger, borg, børge, boer, boy. Right? These, of course, they're not all exactly perfectly vowel sounds. They're kind of also semi-vowels sometimes, but still, it sounds like vowels, most of them. And just for you to see the huge array of sounds that we have vowel-wise. And another thing in the pronunciation, the last thing I'm going to talk about regarding pronunciation is the idea of the stød, which is the glottal stop. Let's just take this example here. Byer, 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 byer. The only thing that sets these two words apart is that one of them has stød, the glottal stop. In this case, it is byer, the first word, byer. The other one doesn't. Byer, byer, byer. That is a very important feature of Danish, and I probably also at some point will make a video about that. Now we get to the last category, which is culture. Cultural things that make it, in my opinion, difficult to learn Danish. One thing is that you can actually get by in Denmark without speaking Danish. Danes are generally super good at English, and the biggest reason for that is that all of the TV that is originally in English, for example, English TV series, reality TV, whatever, movies, is all going to be in English with Danish subtitles. So Danes are going to be exposed to a lot of English from the beginning of their life, actually, right? This has been going on for many decades, so it's only very elderly people who have not been part of this, who will not be that good at English. Generally, the population is very good, so that could kind of make it difficult to get motivated to actually learn Danish, right? But if you want to learn it, if you want to be part of the culture, which I would say is a good idea, right? If you live in the country, for example, or you just have a general interest in the language, you need to motivate yourself. You need to have perseverance, right? You need to want to learn it, because otherwise Danish, since it is not that easy, you have already heard some of the things, especially the pronunciation challenges, make so that you really have to be motivated in order to really stick to practicing, learning, and improving. Okay? Then another cultural thing of Denmark and of Danes in general is that they are not the most open people in most cases. The most open people in the world, right? They're not like, it's not easy to start a conversation with a stranger, for example, in Denmark, especially now in these times, right? And that might be the same if you're from for example, some place in the USA, in big cities is probably similar. But right, it depends on where you're from. It could be a huge shock for you that it's difficult to get into contact, right? To get talking, to get a conversation going with people, and that will make it difficult to practice your Danish. Right? It makes it difficult to practice your Danish because you don't find people to practice with. But when you find people to practice with, there are also problems here, right? There are problems of speaking directly with Danish when you are a learner of the Danish language. One problem is that Danes don't seem to be very flexible with wrong pronunciation and wrong usage of syntax and vocabulary and stuff, but especially pronunciation. This is something I've heard a lot through the years from my different students from different countries, that Danes, if you don't pronounce things perfectly, then Danes will have a hard time understanding you. And this will make them switch to English, which is another problem. So first of all, a thing that you should take seriously is the Danish pronunciation from the beginning. From the beginning, learn the right pronunciation. Record yourself, for example, and listen to your own pronunciation. Make sure you get it as right as possible. Take private lessons if you need to. Often the lessons that are taking place in Denmark, the Danish government actually gives free lessons to people who have moved to Denmark. And often the quality doesn't seem to be that good. The teachers don't have the possibility probably to help individual people with their pronunciation. So people end up, learners of Danish end up having a not that good pronunciation, and that could lead to problems in being understood, right? So, and that can make Danes switch to English, which I've heard again and again that this happens very often. If you don't speak perfectly Danish, then the Danish communication partner will switch to English. And there are several reasons for that. I've tried to figure it out on my own. Maybe I would actually be interested in hearing what you think about that. If you are maybe a Dane even, or if you are learning Danish, have been some time in Denmark, what are your impressions about this, right? Do you agree with what I'm saying here? Is it difficult to speak to Danish? Is it difficult? Are they going to switch to English? Why do you think they switch to English? Maybe I'll make a video about that at some point. I have my own ideas. I have a lot of different ideas about that. But I won't get into detail about that in this video. But a solution, right, to this problem of Danes switching to English is ask them to please speak Danish with you, right? Some will have the patience and some will do it, right? Just please ask them to do it. You could even pretend that you don't speak English, right? If you're from Brazil, for example, and you, of course, speak English if you have moved to Denmark, but you can pretend you don't do it, right? And that will make them, that will force them to speak Danish with you. And then, okay, another thing is that Danes do not correct foreigners when they make mistakes in Danish, which is, again, a Danish thing. It's a cultural thing. We do not really correct each other, overtly at least. Whereas in Germany, for example, I'm also half German. In Germany, you would often correct people. You wouldn't see a problem in that. You would see it as helping them. But it seems like Danes generally see that as a bad thing. You know, the foreigner who doesn't speak perfectly and is corrected will probably, Danes will see it as if they're being criticized, and that's not cool. Which, you know, in my opinion, and I don't know if you agree, but if somebody's learning a language, they will probably be happy about being corrected. depending on how they're being corrected, of course, right? It can be done in a positive and a negative way, right? So that makes, again, that forces foreigners learning Danish to kind of learn to autocorrect, correct themselves by paying attention to the language, having a lot of contact with the real spoken language, recording yourself again, right? Recording yourself today you have a phone, right? You can record yourself with an app easily. I have a video about also how you could do that. And record yourself, watch YouTube videos in Danish, watch Danish TV, listen to Danish music. And again, one thing that I always mention as well is quality over quantity is important, not only in language learning, but in all aspects of our lives, I would say. For example, listening to music. I would definitely recommend you to listen to the same song or the same 3 songs or 5 songs again and again and again for you to get the lyrics, for you to understand it all, for you to be able to sing along, instead of listening to new songs all the time, right? If you are using music, for example, to learn languages. Music is something that has helped me a lot to learn foreign language, for example, Portuguese from Brazil. Okay, so that was the video. As a conclusion, I would say, yes, it is hard to learn Danish. It's harder to learn Danish than Swedish and Norwegian because they are more phonetic languages. Grammar-wise, they are very similar, these 3 languages. And Danish is also a bit harder to learn than English, probably because the grammar is a bit more complicated, I would say. And you have these cultural things, right? It seems like English speakers are used to hearing English pronounced incorrectly by foreigners and will be adapted to that. Well, Danes often don't have that trait of character, it seems, right? So I would really be interested in your opinions about that, about these things I've mentioned, especially the cultural ideas. And I would also be interested in hearing if you have any kind of videos, any video suggestions. I have a long list already, but if you have something that's super interesting, and then you could also, if other people vote that comment up, then I might be more inclined to making that video, if you're interested in seeing a video by me on a certain topic, right? Check out my other videos that are in the description. I hope you like this video. Give it a like, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and see you next time.